Welcome, welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a lovely day in Lagos here. From wherever you're watching us, we'd like to welcome you to the very meeting first version of the Women in Tech Fireside Chat. I am your anchor, your host, your fabulous, whatever you want to call me. My name is Tokoni Abasa. I am a lawyer and a social media rep at the Africa Tech Foundry. Just to go over a bit housekeeping rules and just to help you navigate the platform. On the platform by your right and your left, you can see here there's something called reception, sessions, and networking. So where we are at the moment is called the sessions, and you have the networking. So at the end of the event, you'll be directed to head over to the networking platform where you can just network with attendees, with speakers. It's always good to network at such events. It pushes your brand, it pushes your person forward. Over to the other side, you have something called events and sessions. So now that is for the chat. So the session here, the chat for session is just what's going on in the session, and the chat for the event is an overall view of everything that's going on in the event. If you go through the sessions, you have chat, polls, people, Q&A, and Twitter. If you go to people, you see the list of attendees. You can schedule a meeting with any of them, schedule meetings to network with any of them. So I'm seeing here Kenneth Awom. Hello, good morning, good day, everyone. Well, hello, Kenneth. Happy to have you here. Always live tweet, let everybody know what's going on in the tech event. Just let everybody know what's going on. So just a brief overview of who the AFF is. I'm sure you're very curious. African Tech Foundry is a Pan-African initiative tasked with 5 pillars. Very, very simple. We are digital assets and commercialization, design and innovation, incubation and acceleration. At the moment, we have over 10 startups in the acceleration program. If you're following us on our social media platform, you'll be able to see how we've been highlighting every week all the startups and the work they're doing. Good morning, Abu Michael is we're so happy to have you here as well. Welcome to the Women in Tech. Make sure you're tweeting, you let everybody know what's going on. Remember, I said this many times on our social media platforms that we're officially launching our very first Women Digital Academy. I'll be giving 5 lucky women free entry. So tell your sisters, your cousins, your females, all your female colleagues to make sure they stay put to our social media platforms. We're asking questions on what's going on in the event and how it's going. So just quickly, can you just put in the comment section where exactly you're watching us from? We're live here in Lagos, and it's a fabulous weather here. Not too hot, not too warm. It's just good. So where exactly are you guys watching us from? Let us know. Make sure you tweet. Let us know where that is. If you're on IG, let us know. Oh, hello, Olivia. Morning from London. Well, morning as well from Lagos. Oh, look at it. We have little marketer from Jos, from Germany. Ooh, we're having so many foreign people everywhere. Cool. Kwara State. Well, shout out to Kwara State. Shout out to London. Suleiman, that's my G. We're enjoying the Lagos weather, aren't we? And also the traffic. Terrible, yeah. Then shout out to Kaduna. Asaba as well. That's so great to know where you guys are all watching us from. Really cool. Oh, we have someone from Joburg here. That's so cool as well. So I'm going to put all of our social media handles on the chat section so you can just follow us there. Keep your eyes peeled to our IG as well, our IG, our LinkedIn, our YouTube, and our social media platforms. We have a great lineup of speakers for you guys today, really. Our welcome address is be given by Colette Otusheso, and also with our special guest address. Okay, I'm not going to mention names, so that's like a surprise for everybody. We have a panel session. Trust me, fabulous lineup of speakers. Trust you don't want to miss it. I'm going to introduce our welcome address. That's our next speaker. Her name is Colette. She is a mentor of mine, and I so much love this woman, admire her courage, admire the work she's doing. She's gonna come up soon. But in the meantime, don't fail to, it's rainy here in Uyo. That's why Dijon is saying, well, it's been a warm weather, but it's been very wet in Lagos as well. So let us know how you guys are doing, how how everything is going, what's going on in your city. How's the weather? Is it warm? Is it raining? So I'm just going to go through a few bits of info. Did you know, according to McKinsey Insights, there are more available jobs in the tech space than there are females or even males, most likely females qualified enough for this job. And this is what this event is about. It's meant to drive diversity, not just only driving diversity in how women can play, but in what areas women can play, from the different kind of roles, different kind of jobs, as well as different aspects of tech industry. Because tech industry is not just only fintech. There's farm tech, there's lifestyle tech, there's media tech, there's health tech. Oh, hi Kumar from Mozambique. Wow, we have got a wild array of people in the event, guys. This is so cool. Happy to have you all here as well. Super, super, super happy. Don't worry, our next speaker is going to come up. Don't get bored of me just yet. Our speaker is coming up next. Let's just ask a few questions as well. So our next speaker is coming up next. Her name is Coletto Tusha. So like I said earlier, she's the head of Accelerate. Trust me, you'd want to hear from her. As I said, she's a mentor. I admire her courage and the work she's doing in the industry. She's coming up next, guys. So as I said, keep interacting in the sessions. Let us know where you are, where you're watching live from. Hello, Colette. Happy to have you.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Very well. Please take it away.
Thank you for the lovely words. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone is well. I'd like to thank everybody for being with us here today. I'm really pleased to be able to welcome you to the maiden edition of our Women in Tech Fireside chats. Before we get started, I would like to really express my sincere appreciation for our African FinTech Foundry. And our women banking department. I love what they do in this space. They have generously helped us to make this event come together and for it to be a success. We've got such amazing women on the panel. I can't wait to hear each and every one of them. I'm really, really excited because I'm friends with quite a few of them, and I hope to be friends with some of them that are going to speak. We couldn't have done it without AFF and our women banking, so thank you guys. So this Women in Tech is poised to bring women together of all walks of life, spanning from the female tech industry leaders like our keynote speaker and our panelists, to discuss the diverse nature of the tech industry and ways to play and how we can all play in that space. My name is Coletto Tusha. I am the head of CEO of Accelerate TV. Accelerate is a digital lifestyle platform. We focus on film, fashion, music, and we're really focused on taking the best of Africa to the world. We create a lot of groundbreaking content that can be seen anywhere in the world, and it pushes our continent in the best light possible. So, we really are lovers of African culture, and Accelerate is really committed to pushing an Africa reimagined narrative throughout the world, through our website, through our content. We have a digital magazine that comes out every month called The Cover. We create positive, entertaining, and educative and empowering content. And we train young filmmakers and young creatives in the space and give them opportunities to build themselves and to be better. So yes, we are kind of digitally led. We're about to launch something really special in the coming months, which is quite heavy on digital. It's quite heavy on tech as well. So I'm really excited to be working with the AFF team and some of my other colleagues to bring this to life. You'll see more about that. And this is how I play in the tech space. And obviously this event will expose everyone here to a variety of tech industries, new ones that you don't even think that it's tech, but it really is. And we will see some of the amazing women behind this. So this event is very important in the times that we are now. As a woman, having role models who are the same gender as me is really important, who look like me, who come from similar backgrounds, who are high achievers and want to really do great things. You don't necessarily need a degree in software engineering to play in tech. You need a great idea and you need to be able to get it done. So during the next few minutes or the next hour, we have together, we're going to learn about some of these women doing some great things. And, we hope that we're going to be able to inspire some young ladies in the tech industry, and they can actually look at some of these ladies and think, yes, I want to be just like her when I grow up. So it is really really exciting for me to, and it's a real pleasure for me to welcome and honor our special guest speaker. She is a revered voice in the industry. She is a mentor for me and so many others. She's a role model for so many of us, and she's inspired countless women. I'm speaking about Dr. Awosika. She is our chairwoman of Access Bank Board of Directors. She's leading one of the biggest banks with the biggest customer base, and she is an amazing lady. She actually was the permanent secretary in the Federal Ministry of Internal Affairs for Science and Tech and Power. So she was one of the first groundbreaking women that worked in tech, and I'm so honored to know her. I'm so honored to call her a mentor, and I'm so honored to introduce her to the panel. She's also an accomplished pharmacist in the global scale. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to please raise a virtual hand for our chairwoman of Access Bank, Dr. Awosika. Good morning, Ma.
And embracing the usual, been listening to you this morning. Thank you for your kind words in the introduction. And I want to thank everyone that is participating in this and putting Access Bank in the forefront of the banks in the area of technology and putting Access Bank on the global space. I want to thank every one of you, including the ED, Mr. Debajomo, for this important occasion. It's in the right direction. On this speaking, I spoke to Mr. Ade this morning, and I said it's about women. Women are very stable. Women don't rush to Canada, so and they're ready to be taking game, to be in there to develop the tech arm of Access Bank. Technology has slowly taken over the aspects of the daily life from all of us: how we shop, how we travel, how we communicate with another, and also how we receive news. Some will argue that it is socially responsible for tech companies to not only be diverse, but foster true inclusion as well. What we see this morning is true inclusion. Putting the tech services and products in the hands of one demographic is a lot of responsibility, especially when we live in a diverse world, so the technology we're using should be produced by a workforce reflective of the diversity of not just the countries we live in, but the world. It's a global affair. Since the advent of the internet boom, technology has been seeing a rise in its use, from production of instruments, devices, utensils, and browsing, etc. We can go on. But since the pandemic, there's been a rise in the demand and consumption technology. So should we be thanking the pandemic, even though we don't like it, but quite some positive things have happened in technology in this space. Two biggest barriers for women in technology are lack of mentors, and that's about 48%, and a lack of female role model, about 42%, both being very significant. The gap is also having a knock-on effect on increasing gender diversity in technology, as 35% of women have noticed an unequal pay, between men and women for the same skills. The technology industry, amongst others, faces an inherent gender diversity problem. Such a problem brings the limited ability to respond to other issues the sector faces, and thus affect the industry's future. If it isn't enough for us to discuss the lack of diversity in the industry if there aren't qualified women for the role. We need to address the issue of the mindset that STEAM courses are relegated to the male species. The farm tech industry needs pharmaceutical technicians, biotech experts, etc. These are very necessary adjunct to ensuring that the practice of the profession is put in the full glare with great success. It has been widely reported that the tech industry is suffering from a skills shortage. Recent statistics from the Edge Foundation highlighted that there were 600,000 tech vacancies in the UK as of summer 2018. Increasing and improving diversity and inclusion in the tech industry is an investment companies can make and must make to increase the talent pool and lessen the skills shortages. Employers are potentially missing out in all of this. So there's a need to focus in this area, in the skills and ideas, and if they aren't being perceived as an inclusive place of work, this also needs to be considered because people may be putting off applying for vacancies. So there's a lot of work to do, but not too much work, and there's capacity around the room. So lastly, I would like to leave you with the wise words of Maya Angelou, a poet. And she says, it is time for parents to teach young people early on that in diversity, there is beauty and there is strength. We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color may be. Great lesson for us and great hope for the future. Thank you. A very great session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Woshika. These are great words from a very powerful woman, very revered voice in the industry. As our earlier speaker said, Colette Otusheso, sorry. She is one of the groundbreaking women in the industry. So we're very lucky and pleased and honored to have her in our midst. Now that was our special guest speaker that I told you guys about, I wasn't going to mention. Now don't forget to keep asking questions, making noise in the comments, let us know where you are. Apparently the weather is changing right here in Lagos, so it seems that it's going to be raining very soon, just as it is in Calabar, I believe. Sorry if I got your state wrong, like Eddie Jones said earlier. So, but Eddie Jones seems like to have a rainy weather joining you soon. So, guys, keep your eyes peeled. But I'm having our next speaker. Our next speaker is going to be giving the keynote address. Her name is Teju Ajani. But let me know, what do you think so far, guys? What are your thoughts? I mean, with everything that's been said so far. So I'm reading the comments as well. Thank you, Ahmed. Awesome words. I'm reading the comments as well, keeping you guys also informed in everything that's going on. What do you guys think? What's your take on the current diverse stage, diversity in the tech industry? What can we do? What ways do we think we should play more? I mean, it's not just, this event is not for only female. The male gender have or do have a role to play in this conversation. It's very important that we all have this conversation because, for one, we need to equip ourselves with the right skills, the right certification to be able to play in the industry. Also, we think, just like Dr. Woshika said when she instead of what Maya Angelou did say, that it's key that we inform, parents do start to inform their kids of the importance of diversity. And STEM is not just for only male, STEM is for female. So like one of our panelists, I'm not going to mention the name, she did say in her biography that what introduced her, what inspired her to get into the tech industry was her father. Her father got her first laptop to take her all the way to summer camp for typing. And then that's when she fell in love with with the tech industry, and it's just become part and part of our thing and part of our work. So tech is not just the fact that you're a programmer or you're a digital marketer. It's how exactly you interweave this into how you interweave it into your business, your mundane business. It could be from simply how you onboard customers onto your business, whether you're a store owner or whatever it is you're doing. That's the beauty of tech. The fact that it scales up your processes, it scales up everything you're doing. And with COVID-19, who knew that tech would be the industry that would grow so much, where everybody will be, okay, what's going on in the tech industry? And as simple as an update on iPhone. I mean, a colleague of mine was telling me that there's a new feature on the iPhone. And what the iPhone does, apparently, if you have your AirPods on, it would basically tell you who's calling you. And then you can say, do you want to pick or not? And you say yes, and instantly you'll be able to speak to the person you want to speak to, or person that's calling you. So this is how tech has improved our daily lives. It's changed where we shop. It's changed from Jumia to lifestyle to blogging. It's changed everything that we're doing. Thank you, Edijo. Absolutely. So I'm going to read Edijo's comment. She said, I agree with the last speaker. The tech world isn't really favorable for women. Some of us are not paid well like the male folk in the tech. We are underestimated for reasons best known to the employers. I was once told that women cannot be programmers because they will be distracted with makeup, monthly cycles, and childbirth. And while that is very true, this is the whole point of this conversation, to change the focus, change the outlook of how women can play. Forbes said that we can increase the world's GDP by trillions of dollars if we allow women to play in the role. And thank you, Amir. That's absolutely spot on. We need to be more accepting of female-led tech endeavors, support and empower them. I remember this is something Duchess Megan said, that women have a voice. We just need to create the space to allow them express themselves in its beauty and its shape and its talent as well. I can tell you that currently in the AFF, we've got a slew of female programmers. And the point is to add more, and that's the beauty of this event. So we can add more people. So with the Female Digital Academy, the whole concept is to teach women, equip them with those right skills, those right certification, where they can apply for these types of jobs and progress. So we don't have in a room of 10 programmers, we don't have 2 DevOps that are females. We have 5, 7, and we have women who are having proper conversations. Trust me, this panel session, you want to be part of it. This conversation that we're going to have is, it's going to be powerful. You have to join. Make sure you stick around, and hope you're putting on your IG, you're putting on your Facebook, you're putting on your LinkedIn, that people should come and join you. I mean, I don't know, don't dull yourself, and tell your friends so they can tell their friends too. It's a good event. Thank you, Abu Michael. You are so correct. That's so spot on. Abu said women are so talented that they can produce so much a lot. The first thing to change is the mindset. That is absolutely right. So that's what we need to start. That's the whole concept of the event. We need to change the focus and the look and idea of how women are viewed in the tech space. So women have a lot to offer in terms of ideas, in terms of a lot of things. I'll give you an example. So the Kotex is a sanitary tool. Now, the way Kotex, and I'm not advertising for Kotex, guys. So this is just an example. It's sanitary tool. The way it's created by a female who knows exactly the comfort and style that it would fit a woman when she's on her period. And this is an innovative way. There are many other innovative ways. Things are coming up as well. Thank you, Body Wahala. Lovely comment. It says, amazing as more importance is placed on involving women in tech. This makes motherhood and being a wife much more easier. If you're not in the tech life, you find hard to work remotely. It improves everything. Absolutely spot on. That's true. Very correct. So I know I'm keeping you guys. I know you enjoy my voice and you enjoy me, but we're going to have our speaker soon, Tejo Ajani. Just a little brief rundown on who she is. She is the country lead for Apple Inc. The very first. Let me properly, guys. She is the first female to be the country lead for Apple Inc. Our Apple products that we're always using, the AirPods, the phones, the iPad, the MacBook, Apple. She is that country lead. And she started her career in in the tech industry. She studied engineering. So she's really, 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 it's not even that I've well, not yet met her, but I'm happy to email her soon. And I'm sure you guys are also excited. Thank you. I'm really loving how you guys are engaging me on the comments. Make me feel, even if I'm not, feels like face to face is virtual, but I feel like I'm part of you guys. You guys are part of me. Thank you so much. Keep putting in the comments, guys. I love reading your comments. Thank you, Abu. I have an opportunity to train figures in graphics, and I was amazed at the. This is great work. Great work. Keep it up. We're also doing a highlight on our IG this month. We're highlighting the different women who are powering the tech industries. And as I said earlier, the people section, you can schedule a meeting with any of these speakers. Just click on people, schedule a meeting with any of them. Network. That's the beauty of such events, network. Thank you, Teju. It's such an honor to have you. As I said, guys, Teju is an amazing man, the very first woman to country lead Apple Inc. Take it away, Teju. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the great introduction. Appreciate that. So my name is Teju Ajani, and I am the country lead and managing director of Apple in Nigeria. This morning, I am going to talk to you about just technology in general and how we, as females in the industry, can drive diversity in the industry. Before I start, I have to give a disclaimer. The opinions I share here today are mine, and they're not representative of any employers of mine, past, present, or future. We just have to do the housekeeping there. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Now let's start with demystifying some terminology. I'm not sure if it's able to be shared, but if not, that's fine. We can still go on. Now, the bottom line is this: marginalization. What is the problem we're facing in the tech industry today? Women are facing marginalization. What is marginalization? We use all these big words, we hear all these big terms. And, sometimes we forget to think about the meaning of that. When you hear marginalization, it sounds like this amazingly big, complex challenge. But really, simply defined, it is the treatment of a person, group, or concept as insignificant. Let me stop for a second and have that sink in. That is something that all of us, I can say, we've done either consciously or unconsciously sometime during our life. And so the reason I'm making that point is to show that it's very, very easy to do things that we don't think about the implications of. Now, fast forward to the tech industry today, what we are seeing is a result of marginalization, typically of women over centuries and over time in every single culture that you can find on the face of the earth. Now, marginalization is just a nuance, right? That people use to exclude other people from whatever their we is. Now let's move on to technology. What is technology? Technology is all around us, but the definition of technology, at least one definition, says that it is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes, especially in industry. Technology is all around us. From the phones we use to the life-saving machines, innovations in medicine. Technology is not just for computer science and programming geeks anymore. It's integrated with how we live our lives and how we interact, how we communicate, how we think about transportation, safety, access to food, healthcare, and so on. Technology is the fourth industrial revolution in solving for the world's current problems and in defining the future. We're talking these days about AI, about traveling to space, about innovations with driverless cars, but yet we're still taking advantage of technology for collaboration, particularly, for example, in the past year, with movement restricted around the world. Everybody used technology to communicate. People use technology more to conduct business, to do other things that they normally would not have maybe engaged technology before. I know some will argue and say that there are varying regional demographics across the world. But as last check, women still make up 50% of the world and 50% of the global population. Evolution that minimizes or leaves out half of the world's population will not only be incorrect and inefficient, but ultimately will not serve humanity's needs. So what do we need? We need diversity. Diversity is the state of diverse. Again, that's a It also means variety, right? The practice of including and involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, and so on. Now, diversity and inclusion breed innovation and robustness in solutions. Why? Because of the variety of thoughts that leads to better solutions and eventually will actually improve the bottom line for companies and organizations that embrace diversity as a policy. Biases can and will be carried forward and otherwise could have an exponential impact given the current growth of automation and algorithms that are building future solutions from today. To address this gap that Dr. Owoshika talked about, that everybody's been chatting about in the comments, we need education that addresses the needs of today and tomorrow by integrating science, not just the focus on science, technology, engineering, art, and math, STEAM, but by also integrating science with all other fields of study. It's no longer enough to just encourage exposure to STEM fields at a young age or during your career. We need to start focusing on fusing STEM with all aspects of education and our lives in order to build a balanced future. I challenge everyone or anyone here to think about a field today that technology or that would not even benefit from a technological solution, whether it be agriculture, whether it be mining, whether it be healthcare, whether it be food supply, food production. We realize and we know that that's where we are today. Gender diversity in technology today needs to be grown with focused initiatives, varying from building a diverse and representative pipeline. Of course, I'm talking about employers here and companies, to companies adopting policies that address barriers such as hostile work environments, or to make sure that their women and the female at their place of work is over-investing on training and scaling. Make sure that when there are requirements for roles filled, there's not only a pipeline, there is a diverse and balanced pipeline. And this will begin to introduce parity in the work. Individuals like us also, here today, need to start paying attention and focusing on our own areas of influence to encourage and grow female representation. First in education and overall focusedly in technology-focused solutions and fields. The world has changed. The world is beyond waiting to get educated from a school or from somebody else or from lecturers or what have you, books and all. The world has evolved and is continuing to evolve. There is an aspect of personal responsibility also that now exists, along with all the other efforts that are still needed in order for the changes to happen. Therefore, I will say to everyone listening today, empower yourself, empower others, get online, get tech engaged, and to make a difference. There's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Diversity in technology will ensure that we go far. Let's go. My name is Teju Ajani, and this is what I have to share today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teju. Those are very powerful words, powerful things. Thank you so much. Remember to keep your eyes also, aside from paying attention, keep your eyes on our IG, follow us on our IG handle. There are questions that are being put on there. As I said, we're giving 5 women, 5 lucky women, free entry to the Female Digital Academy. I'm going to go about what the academy is, but when you answer that, so how this works. Women who respond the most, who have the most correct answers, we will then select the top 5 and announce on our social media platform tomorrow morning. So what was your take, guys? I mean, that was the powerful message. I mean, she dared anybody basically who had anything to say against the tech industry to actually mention a business that doesn't require tech. Every single business in this world now requires tech. Even lawyers are actually finding ways to push through barriers, push to involve tech in the industry as much as we can. There's a startup in the UK that is legal tech. So from their processes, everything they're doing is all tech. Everything they're doing, from filing processes, having meetings with clients, to creating new and innovative ways to move and thrive the legal system in the UK. And then we're doing that here in Nigeria, little by little. It's a slow growth, but there's some growth. What we're doing here is from how we have these in Lagos. I can say very well as a lawyer, proud lawyer, by the way. I can say with my chest. I can say with my chest that most courts you go to, you find out that judges now have a recorder that records most of the cases, so that it's easy to play back what's being said rather than having to write notes and many notes. I mean, you have a judge tell you slow down, you're speaking too fast because they're writing notes. You have to speak slow. So these are new ways. Even processes now. There's actually e-way. There's like an e-process method or platform where you can send in your files. So we're all involving tech into our business. This is really why this conversation is very key. I say this again, it's key. So we're going to go to our panel session next. I hope you're having fun. Keep engaging me in the comments. Let me know that I am not alone. I agree with you, Abu. Any business that doesn't require tech does not exist. I agree. Absolutely. I'm putting a lol in that section as well. Lol. You're absolutely correct. Any business that doesn't require tech doesn't exist, as Abu said. I absolutely agree. Keep engaging me in the comments, guys. Keep engaging the speakers in the comments. We're heading to our panel session. I'm going to introduce our moderator. Our moderator is the fabulous orator. Her name is Toriso. She is from South Africa, so she'll be joining us here live from Joburg. Hi, Toriso. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Good morning, everyone. And contrary to Amma's weather update from earlier, I am dialing in right now from the very cold South Africa. Nonetheless, still very excited to be part of this session and this conversation today. I'm very excited not only about our speakers, right, but the level of engagement. I've been going through some of the questions that have been posted on the site there. And just as mentioned by Amma, my name is Toriso Maloka, and I'm a management consultant at Systemic Logic, which is one of the partners bringing forth to you this particular discussion. But at the same time, as discussed by Amma, I am somewhat of an orator as well as a radio talk show host, which brings forth, I think, the importance of highlighting that we can be multiple things, we can be multifaceted. And I think owing to our participation in the tech space as women, you're often told and you're often expected to participate in one space, but incidentally you can do multiple of those. And as a conversation strategist, as a management consultant, it is my social responsibility to take my work and to make sure that that information is accessible to the public. We speak a lot about the 4IR, for example, and we've learned over time that we actually, a lot of the people that we socialize in bars or barbecues, we mention 4IR as a tool and not necessarily as a period that is well enhanced by the use of technology. And the conversations that we're going to have in the next hour highlight all of that and more. I'm going to do a short introduction of our speakers today. I just want to pull up my quick notes of our panelists today. Quite an exciting set of panelists, as exciting as our guest speakers from earlier on, and as exciting of the experiences as well. Please do share in your questions on the right-hand side of the chat poll. I will be going into some of those questions from the left-hand side of the panel. Do engage us on social media as well. It is Africa FinTech Foundry on Instagram. Post your posts and we can go and repost those as and how we go with this particular conversation. But of course, a wide array of panelists, and I'm excited to be here and to be able to share in some of those with you. And like I said, share in your questions on the left-hand side and we can take it from there on. And I mean, it's like I said, we are all sitting right now in different parts of the world, and more so we tend to have celebrations around the use of what do you call this, the use of remote working solutions, the use of remote working tools. But I think more importantly, we need to acknowledge some of the the downfalls that some of us may be facing. I'm sitting in South Africa at the moment where, as a result of what we call load shedding, which are essentially electricity blackouts, we experience on average a shortage of electricity for about 6 hours a day. Can you imagine what that does to productivity? We can imagine what does that to marginalized communities that may not necessarily be in place and spaces to afford internet access to afford fiber and the likes of. But of course, do stay tuned, and I will do a short introduction right now of our speakers and our panelists rather.
Hello, can I speak to Mr. Bello?
Mr. Bello is speaking. Who is this?
Hello, Mr. Bello. My name is Gloria, and I'm calling regarding the family savings scheme form you dropped off last week. Do you remember?
Yes. I remember now.
The form is missing your signature. Do you mind stopping by sometime this week?
Mr.
Not a problem. We will come to you.
We go walk the walk with you, no matter where we get you from we go for a penny price, so we get.
So guys, hope you're having fun. So Thurso actually is going to come back soon, and we're bringing all our panelists. Just to introduce a few of them, we have our VC, she's the founder of First Check. Her name is Elo. We have the CEO of Okra. Okra is an API community. So that's the first digital API community in the country. That's Farah Jitabo. We have our other speakers as well. And then Thurso is going to go through a bit of introduction to them. I remember promising to do a little intro to our Female Digital Academy. Now that's right. The Female Digital Academy is an academy someone can. We're going to teach 50 women how to, because we can't just talk the talk, we have to walk the walk as well. I mean, in AFF, that's what we do. We walk the walk and we talk the talk. We're teaching 50 women how to code. We teach them different programming skills, SQL, Python, Java, etc. We're teaching them managerial skills and business skills as well. It's very key to equip them with the right certificate, with the right thing, so they can employ them, so they can be able to employ and add tech to their mundane businesses. And we're going to go a step further by providing them some level of work or funding as internship or a full job, depending on the age and the need of the women. So which is why I'm saying we're giving 5 women free entry. You have to engage our IG handle. That's the only way you're going to get in, guys. Make sure you do that. So I'm going to hand over back to our moderator, Who's going to introduce our speaker, our panelists. And guys, as I said, I'm going to keep saying again, engage us in the comment section. We really love your comments. Just keep doing that. And then a big shout out to our sponsor, Access Bank. Thank you so much for pushing the need for women in the tech industry, women also in the industry, and to our partner as well, to STEM Project and to the W community. They have really helped, putting this together. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over to our panel discussion now. Engage, guys. Engage the comment.
Thanks again, Amma, and thank you so much for everyone for engaging on the left-hand side. I do see that there's some questions that are popping up at the same time. There are a couple of people helping with some of the responses already. But to introduce our panelists and how we're going to go about this is that I will mention our panelists. I'm really excited to chat to all of them today, and I hope that you're as excited as well. So I will do an introduction of our panelists, but what I will also ask is that for each of the panelists, upon the first question that you ask, please do an introduction of yourself as well as some of the work that you are busy with at this point in time. And I think excitedly so as to where you're located at this point in time. We do have a number of people that are joining us from Germany. I saw there's Germany, I saw there's London, I'm in South Africa now, so there's quite a number of people. There's someone from Mozambique, yes, it is Mozambique, and there's quite a number of people, of course, in Nigeria. Now, our panelists, very, very experienced, as I highlighted earlier on. We have Professor Oliyanka David West. We have Tosin Faniro Dada. Actually, let me just go back. So, of course, Professor Oliyanka David West is a director in academics. We have Tosin Faniro Dada, who is a CEO or MD of Endeavor. We have Farah Chitipu, who is the co-founder of and CTO at Okra. And I do believe that with all the experiences that they're bringing forth today, you're going to take advantage of some of their expertise, right? And where they sit in terms of just a knowledge base and asking questions. Before I go and introduce, the rest of our speakers, I really want to maybe just spend some time asking a few questions to the three of our panelists that are joining us at this point in time before we move on to the second set. And a very good morning from myself, I believe a good afternoon to many of you, or to some of you rather. And Professor, maybe starting with yourself, a very good morning from myself and perhaps a good afternoon to you there.
Good morning, Theresa. It's still morning here, but a rainy morning in Lagos.
Oh, great stuff. Oh, great stuff. Prof, if you can just take us through some of your experience and some of the work that you're busy with right now before we dab into, quite a number of the questions. And I think from your part, really, I'll probably then just start with the difficulties that you face in industry, in academia, because we talk a lot about implementation on the tech space. We talk a lot about those of us that are sitting a little bit distant from academia. But at the same time, I think we need to acknowledge how much benefit there is for all of us from on a research point, on an insights point from academia. What are some of the difficulties that you notice, not just for yourself, right, as a professor, but as well as from some of the younger academics or members of academia, as well as young women professionals in technology?
Okay, great. Thank you for that question. And I work at the Lagos Business School, which is a management school. And one of the things I've been doing for the last 18 years is really about being a bridge and a bridge in terms of how do businesses better understand technology and how do technology people better understand and communicate with business. Because we need to be mindful of is that technology is not an end in itself. Technology is a transformational tool for both business as well as society. So how do we kickstart that when we're both on two islands and we don't speak the same language? So I joined the business school about 18 years ago, primarily after working in industry and realizing that you're talking to one another. Technology people are speaking their tech, business people are sort of not understanding what technology people want. And similarly abdicated their responsibilities to the technology people in terms of decision making and their business systems. So for me, it was really about going back and backward integrating into the education sector and really going back to build that bridge and say, you know what, how do we better understand one another? People involved, engaged in technology decisions rather than, oh, it's technical and they close their ears to it. So it's been a journey and a learning process. Now, when it comes to academia and women, you find out that academia is one of those industries that open to everybody. I think the issue of academic setting is also the dynamics of performance, which is really right. And for women, it's really about how do you get access to the right types of networks, to the right types of collaborative groups, because there's certain things you can do alone, and there's certain things collaborative groups to work with. So you have to realize that being engaged in different conversations and in different communities also helps. So women in tech as well, it's really about unearthing the data and starting to call out some of these things. So for example, I'm teaching a leadership class and I get into class and I say, oh, there's only one woman in the class. I question it. And let it be in our consciousness that, there's something not quite right in this setting. Otherwise, if we don't throw these things out and put them on the table, then we're not exactly going to be acknowledging the fact that we need to look at things through a gender lens. So I'll stop there and let Tosi and Farah also chime in, and then we'll continue the conversation. Thanks.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that intro there, Prof. And Tosin, maybe moving to yourself, just of course a brief introduction of the work that you're doing, where you're doing it at the moment, but as well as we've been having conversation around remote working and remote working solutions. Some of us have gained benefit from that, right? Some of us are able to participate a little bit more in our households than we previously could. Unfortunately, some of us, as by way of being women, unfortunately, have adopted and inherited tasks that sometimes lead to fatigue of having to work at home. Not all of us have the infrastructure as well as the luxury of space, the luxury of having a study, for example, at home. Now, not only are you a technologist, but you're a mom, you're a teacher, you've turned into a teacher in the last year, you are a friend, and you are experiencing pandemic fatigue. On top of that, should you be sitting in South Africa at this point in time, you're probably also experiencing load shedding or blackouts. Remote working has been quite exciting. A lot of us benefited from it, yes, but are companies meeting employees at their point of need? Are we effectively discussing some of the issues that by culture, by tradition, by ways of home are almost impeding on how a woman can take out on their task, on their very professional tasks that they usually do as a result of having to work remotely? And what are some of the solutions there that we can sort of look at immediately?
Awesome. Thanks, Teresa. Well, I'm in Lagos, so good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see some friends here. Good morning, Prof. Hi, Fade, Farah. Hello, Aloha. Hi, Simi. So really excited to be here, and thank you for that, Teresa. But just a brief background about myself and my organization and what we do. So I work for Endeavor Nigeria, which is a community for, of, and by high impact entrepreneurs. And what we do is to support entrepreneurs and help them scale their business. So help them create more jobs, help them create wealth, and just ensure that they're able to scale regionally and globally. But in my former life, I worked for the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, where I managed a program called Lagos Innovates. And what we're doing there was to pretty much just support, same thing, the tech ecosystem, and support startups, but generally just supporting them at an early stage. So thinking about their challenges and helping them solve for those challenges. Thinking about what is stopping them from thriving and how can we address those challenges. And just when we thought about some of the programs that we developed, and now I think back to like our very first program, which is a workspace voucher program, and we noticed that from the first cohort that we had of entrepreneurs or founders, we had very few women apply. We had very few women even take advantage of even our loan programs that we had. And so one of the things that we did was to be deliberate about how we approach women and how we bring these programs and tell them about these opportunities. And it goes back to what Professor David West said. We had to then think about where are these women? Who do they trust? Who can we partner with so that they can take advantage of our programs? Who can we talk to that they would listen to? And once we started being intentional and deliberate about this, we saw some results. Again, not as great as we would like, but we did see some results. And then it just makes me believe that, for women, we need to just do more. We need to be deliberate. And I also think about a conversation I had with Eloho. Now, Eloho is all about, women empowerment, and we talk about how for us to achieve true gender equality, women must be empowered. And I remember we're having a conversation about investing in the stock market. And I had never thought about it before. I've read articles, but just never really thought that I could participate. And maybe because the people that were writing the articles or the people that were talking about it just seemed so far away from me. I don't know if I'm making sense, but they just seemed so far. But then the moment somebody who I believe was closer to me, somebody who was helping me break it down, to something that I could relate with and understand. And then it made more sense. And right there and then, I opened 2 accounts. I opened the Bamboo account. Aloha, you're smiling. I'm sure you remember. I opened the Bamboo account, and I opened Rise Vest, just because somebody like me is having that conversation. And so I think it's important that we think about representation. It is so important. It is difficult for a woman to walk into a room and see nobody like herself. It is difficult for a woman to walk into a room and just see one woman. It's intimidating sometimes. And these are conversations that we have to have. So we have to be deliberate and intentional about having enough women and having the right women in the room at all times. And even in front of little girls. Even when you think about technology, encouraging girls to participate in technology, encouraging girls to take advantage of STEM. The truth is, if you don't have mentors or role models that look like them, mentors or role models that they can relate to, then it becomes very difficult for them to connect to these people that you're putting in front of them. I think I'm going off my point now, so let me go back to Teresa's question. But I really wanted to just put that out there. Now, in terms of remote work, COVID has taught us that yes, it is possible. But I think we should also be sensitive to our market and be sensitive to our limitations and our conditions. The truth is, we don't have the best infrastructure in Nigeria. We don't have consistent power. In fact, they probably might take light now because it's raining. So get ready for that. It might go dark very soon. And also, internet is expensive. Now, most businesses in Nigeria are small businesses. There's more small businesses than large corporates. And the truth is, small businesses cannot afford for their staff. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, they can't afford to give them extra money for internet. They can't afford to power all their staff, and so they have no choice but to ensure that they come to work. And so it's difficult and it's expensive. So most times when you hear of people that are working remotely and just full time, it's most times companies who can afford it. But most small businesses cannot afford it. And, it's our reality. And we have to be honest with ourselves and have that conversation sometimes. It's just
Absolutely.
Our reality. We can't afford it.
Absolutely.
I'll pause here now so I don't continue rambling.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I'm actually going to borrow quite a bit from some of the points that you've just made now. But before we do so, I want to introduce the rest of our panelists. You're more than welcome to set in your questions on is it the left? Is it the right? It's on the left, right, on the right-hand side, the right-hand side rather of the chat. And I will pick up from there. There's actually quite an interesting point that I am seeing from Claudia Tatiana on that are around women-led tech startups. And before we do that, we also have Aloha Omame, who's the founder of First Check. We have Simi Jumbo, who's the founder, and hey, Sequel Babe, if we may as well, and Fade Ogunro, who is the CEO of Bookings Africa. Like I said, very, very well experienced women and very technical panelists that we have here today. Please join in with your questions on here. Farah, just a brief of introduction of yourself, as well as some of the work that you do, right? I think it's Claudia who mentioned here, and I might have just lost the comment. Oh, there we go. So Claudia says, I think we need to start by encouraging and supporting women-led tech startups and initiatives. In that way, it encourages and motivates others to join the train, which I think also borrows quite a bit from what has just been mentioned by Tosin in terms of sometimes a somewhat of a fear or a reluctance of application and participation from women. But Farah, with that said, I mean, from your view and from the work that you've been doing, the role of startups and how it can play how it can address some of the social unrest that we see, particularly in Nigeria and on the continent. Do you rate that startups can play a part rather in solving some of those social issues? I mean, I think at least 3 of us spoke about power, and the loss of power, and we're sitting in 3 different parts of the continent at this point in time. Is that something that we can allow, for example, independent power players to provide for power in the different parts of the continent that we're sitting in? And can we allow women also, right, to be the leading faces, the leading voices, as well as the leading brains in those particular teams?
Hi, Teresa. Thanks so much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. Happy to see so many familiar and new faces as well. So yeah, I think, well, first of all, I'm Farah. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO and CTO of Okra. And essentially what we're doing is building an open finance API and infrastructure to enable, essentially our mission is to allow Africa to compete in the next industrial revolution. And we think that that starts with the proper access to the tools that you can, that allow businesses to digitize and create truly personalized services and experiences for their customers, and for consumers to have access and real-time access to not only and control of their data, as well as the ability to digitize a lot of the services that they're used to, having to do manually. And I think, the question that you asked is really interesting. I mean, I don't think that, technology and startups are going to be the cure to unrest and social unrest on the continent, but I do think that we can play an important part. And I think that, generally, not just in Nigeria, but generally, I think that a lot of unrest comes from, lack of security, financial security, lack of proper infrastructure, lack of access to jobs and opportunities, general frustration with the lack, I'll just continue saying the word lack and lack and lack, but there's a lot of, lacks. And I think that what a lot of technology startups are doing, and a lot of businesses and startups are doing generally, is trying to build solutions and using technology as the driver for those solutions to solve these problems. So you talked about, energy, and that's in twofold. That's the access to proper and stable energy, but that's also the access and the ability to afford, alternate stable energy sources as well. Because if we completely go solar, can I afford that? Can I, do I have access to be able to, save money because I'm not paying my rent, for a year up front, do I have access to proper job, a job, and so on and so forth, and education. There's so many, aspects of businesses that technology is the main driver and the catalyst to help drive that. And I think that that's where it starts in startups, and that's where, the role startups play, is the ability to offer not just jobs and opportunities, but solutions, and from infrastructure and from the general standpoint to a lot of these problems. Access to these resources that you would need in order to start building more of a thriving situation. And then that way, I think that that is the part that startups can play when it comes to that type of unrest.
Absolutely. And I mean, when we speak of that as well, I really want to sort of, in terms of startups, right, as well as making sure that there's fair participation. I think Eloho is essentially, one of the people that can help us with this one. And Eloho, with a brief introduction of yourself, the work that you're busy with, but I'm going to pick up from what Farah has just said right now in terms of participation in startups. The other interesting part, I mean, and at first shake, I would understand that this is something that you do quite extensively. What is the criteria that is often used to select startups, tech-led or tech startups in particular, that see themselves through, successful incubation programs, successful mentorship programs, which I think Prof spoke to earlier on in terms of women? Just, it seems as though there's a lack of mentorship. And when we speak of this guidance, when we speak of this mentorship, when we speak of these incubations, we expect them to be women-led. But I think first, if we can just capture around the criteria, what is the criteria that is used at first check? As a start across the industry that you may know of, or the framework rather that is used and created in selecting the startups to invest in, and can this framework really help companies decide whether it should invest in a particular startup or not? And yeah, if we can just double dab onto that one.
Okay, hi.
I hope you can hear me. Please confirm.
You're very audible.
Okay, hi. My name is Eloho. I'm one of the co-founders of First Check Africa. And we are effectively a woman-led, woman-focused, female-focused early stage pre-seed fund. And we're particularly focused on investing in technology ventures that are led by women or gender balanced teams. We particularly like, obviously led by women, so we like female CEOs, but also we like female CTOs. We are very excited when we see female CTOs, and we want more that have those two profiles in them. So for example, you know, to me, Farah is a unicorn in that she's CEO and she's CTO, and I hope that we can have more women at the helm of technology ventures. I guess also in context, one of the reasons that we have focused on technology ventures and on women, I think touches on a lot of the conversation that's been happening already, which is there is obviously, you know, an imbalance in terms of representation. And I comments earlier, I used the word underrepresented, and I think she's spot on. Sorry, underestimated, and I think she's spot on. Women are underestimated and underrepresented in technology all over the world. And so the result is that in Africa, as well as other parts of the world, you have about a quarter or so of technology employees are women. And of course, you have much fewer technology CEOs, especially funded CEOs that are women. And this is a challenge, and I think that context is relevant when you think about how technology ventures are funded, right? There's an entire fundamentally today, only I think less than 5%, depending on which region you're looking at, is either 2% or close to 5%, but less than 5% on a whole of capital that goes into funded businesses, funded technology businesses, high growth technology businesses, so the kinds of businesses that Tosin is working to create. Less than 5% of that capital goes to businesses that are led by women. And a lot of that has to do with a couple of things that have already been mentioned. So we've talked about, you know, the rate at which, we've mentioned the rate at which women are getting funded. We've talked about the culture and whether or not technology as a whole is conducive to female participation, etc. But I think one thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, frankly, is the biases that come into how companies are funded. We tend to dance around the issue. We don't call it. And the reality is that is the single most important influence on the outcome, on the fact that there is 5%. We talk a lot about how there are not enough women at the top of the funnel and women aren't participating in technology. Perhaps women are participating in technology at the same rate that men are, but that statistic is actually a little bit irrelevant. The reality is that if you look at women that are raising capital, these are completely different. And there's lots of data about the fact that women tend to raise less, women tend to get harder questions, women tend to, etc. right? And the result is that 5%. So in terms of how it all works, usually you have venture capitalists, obviously, who are looking for high growth businesses and are looking for companies that can grow to significant scale, so they can make some of the outsized returns that they raise their capital to make and they promise to their investors. And that means that there's certain ways of working. So for example, there is a culture around referrals and warm referrals, right? So the idea is, I think Farah is a great entrepreneur, right? So, but sorry, the reality is Farah might be a great entrepreneur, but the way the industry works today is usually the VC counts Farah as potentially more credible if she's introduced to them by somebody that they already know and that's within their network, right? So for women, tend to be locked out of some of those kinds of networks just by the fact that we're not as equally represented. For example, it's much harder to break into those networks, right? So first of all, you're waiting for a warm introduction. When you get into the room with the VC, there's lots of data about the fact that women just face different questions. You talk about your business, right? And the Harvard has done lots of studies about this, and there's where you have one, the business that looks exactly the same. The only difference is one is a male-led business, the other is a female-led business. And you find that once you reveal that information, the kinds of feedback and the questioning, first of all, and the feedback and the risks that people worry about and how they think about upside varies, right, quite significantly. And the most significant explanatory factor for those differences is gender. So women then have to do things like pitch, for example, in pitch competitions. And yes, it's how the industry works, but it's much harder for a woman, right? Because you walk into that room, and for example, if you're a Black woman, it's white male faces. And we talk about things like the confidence gap, and women should be much more comfortable, and women should go for it. Yes, but it's really hard, and we don't acknowledge that enough. So, that's how capital is raised. That's how VCs think about capital. And I just think the entire structure just is really, really, it's suboptimal. If we really want to address some of these issues around gender participation in VC. And the final thing I think I will say is also what's happening is those investment teams tend to be male-led. The decision makers tend to be male. The people who are allocating capital tend to be male. Somebody made the comment, I think it might have been you actually, Teresa, where you said sort of product design fundamentally, and how, you know, sometimes when you have a product that's designed by a woman, it's different. The reality is, again, from an entrepreneur who's pitching, if you're pitching to a room full of men and you're pitching a female health, sometimes it's difficult for men to completely understand what you're talking about. I don't think it should be, right? Because I think that the way we think about our investment thesis should be independent of the market, if there's a market opportunity, etc. But that is a very real experience for women, and I've seen it play out live, where you have a panel of men and say, I don't even understand the product. And the rest of us in the audience who are watching, I think this is a fantastic product, and so many women need this, but the men just said, I don't see a market for it, literally, right? When there was a market for it. So this is how venture is allocated. The result is that women end up with 5% of global, less than 5% of global VC. It's a real problem. And I think it's important we start talking about it as a direct issue, as opposed to all of these other issues around how women need to do this different and fix that different. The reality is the issue is that we need to fix it.
Absolutely. And Rita here, in agreement here, saying this is great feedback, especially on solving the gender bias currently being faced with large capital funding for startups. And that is the point on VCs. Women just face different questions. So I think just brings in such an important part of the conversation, right? That interestingly, at the same time, you know, you mentioned being a Black woman, you know, in certain spaces, and South Africa, for example, is one of those where you're constantly battling between those two dynamics. But at the same time, you also have to be constantly wary that being Black or being a woman is not the actual value proposition. Your product and your service is the value proposition. Yet at the same time, you're fighting and battling against these systemic exclusions, which really made me excited, super excited when I saw the video. And I'm not sure if you all had a chance to see it, the advert earlier on where you know, someone is being requested to come into the bank to sign on a form, and he says, no, I can't because I'll be at the waters. And then, you know, they send a banker or a member of the bank then to go meet them at their point of need, which speaks to inclusive banking in Africa during our time when we all hold here, all of us in here in this platform hold that social responsibility to ensure that the products that are designed meet the needs of our people. And Fade, which then brings me to you then, and I have to welcome you back. We've had, you know, a similar discussion and yet different in one of the discussions that we had a couple of months ago. And just by way of to that, there's some challenges that we've seen in the last 12 months. And I don't think that these challenges started in the last month. These challenges have just been zoomed into as a result of us being, you know, spatially separated and the likes of. But there's been some exciting things. I mean, I recently got onto Apple Pay, you know, which is quite exciting as someone that loses their bank card quite often. It's also exciting to be able to make payments using my Apple Watch or using my iPhone. But at the same time, there are products such as M-Pesa. In South Africa, we have the likes of instant money, e-wallet, and the likes of that often are products that, although I view on a very, you know, it's a matter of convenience and efficiency, it's interesting how much the unbanked community in Africa have benefited from those particular products. Those are some of the exciting ones that really have seen and experienced explosive growth. What are the upcoming lifestyle I want to say upcoming trends, right? Or spaces that we can see sort of growing in the same light in the next couple of months as well, not just as a result of what we have seen happen during the pandemic, but as just a basic need.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you everyone for having me on here. It's great to see familiar faces and new faces. I'll just start with a brief intro. My name is Fade Ogunro, and I am the CEO/founder of bookingsafrica.com. And bookingsafrica.com is pioneer in digital work. So we've got about 25 in South Africa, and now you can book people as easily as you. You can filter for professional service providers, and we would now be the only platform in sub-Saharan Africa that also offers a virtual call service. So you can have a fitness instructor physically come to you, or you can book them virtually and have a call from anywhere across the country. And that's made possible by platforms such as Faras, where we can actually accept payment cross-continent, because that is one of the major challenges that we faced. Now, I actually am an executive producer. I owned a production company, and I traveled across sub-Saharan Africa filming content for lots of multinational companies, and sourcing credible professionals was really quite, it was fragmented and it was difficult and it was inefficient. And I just thought, how can I automate this process? And as a frustration that I faced as an executive producer, kind of birthed Bookings Africa. So to go back to your question, Clarissa, about the upcoming trends that I see. Well, first of all, I think that because big data, the Internet of Things, as naturally with time, as the flow increases and we collect more big data, I think the natural trend that we've seen over the last 12 months is more a global social consciousness. People are trying to find more ways to kind of find more solutions to help others, and how tech can enable that. So I think with the emergence of big data coming together with social data, I predict that there'll be a lot of technology that will enable us predict behavior, and that way we can actually hone in and understand how people buy better, or how the buying and the interest. And I think people will start to develop a lot more technology and a lot more solutions based around this new data that we're able to gather. And it's going to be quite interesting to see how that reflects within the context of Africa and within the context of women. Because generally, just over the last decade, the world has kind of, woken up to the potential of women and the power that we can play when it comes to economic growth. And everyone's trying to leverage off of this social change, and they can see that we're now the conduits for the advancement. How they can, the big data, when they gather all this data, as well as the economic empowerment of women over the course of the next few years, I think that with the information that we get, we're going to be seeing a lot of emergent technology specifically geared towards women. But in the short term, I think AI, ML, I think that's definitely trends that's definitely going to pick up across board of no matter what industry you're in. I think ways that would enable user experience so that we can all be quite included in the actual user experience of a technology platform. So you mentioned, Theresa, of the banker meeting people at their needs. And I think that's something that the Western world haven't really had to play a hand in that, such as solutions such as M-Pesa or USSD. There are things that we're not necessarily as common in the Western world, but we've had to disrupt that and be innovative as Africans, because we need to meet people at the point of their needs. So I think a lot more technology that's going to bridge that gap so we can move people, especially the informal community, the informal economy, solutions to move them to participate further and be included in that digital economy. I also think that there are going to be a lot more apps for a space around mental health and well-being. I think that that's a trend that we should look out for. I think AR will be quite prevalent probably when it comes to e-commerce. I think that's definitely a trend. And you also mentioned smart tech. You mentioned paying for items with your Apple Pay, with your Apple Watch now. So definitely, I think smart tech is something that we should be looking out for as future trends. But for women to play a role in all of this, talking about women in tech and driving diversity, it's great to look at what the lifestyle trends might be in the future, but I think it's very important that women play a part in this conversation now, because product design and the user experience, we don't want to be left out of it if everything is always designed by the man. Because you were mentioning earlier on, or sorry, Eloho was mentioning earlier on about, pitching maybe a female will just not understand. Once again, if we are trying to have that be included in that conversation, we have to drive that innovation, whatever it is that we're trying to develop. Women have to, from the root, play a part in the solution, so that more women in the usage and the uptake of this solution as well. I think there was some statistics, like majority of the platforms globally, from your TikTok to your Instagram, LinkedIn, everything, they're all designed by men. So how would that play a part in when it comes to identity, when it comes to even bullying online, when we know that a lot of teenagers look at Instagram for validation, for likes? If that product was designed by women, and we know that mentally there might be a lot, teenagers might be more affected by that, would we have designed that same product, that same feature? So things like that, and how that's also affecting suicide rate just by having that simple like feature. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of correlations between the social and the user experience and the product development from a man's perspective. Women's perspective, and I think that is a trend that I'm definitely looking forward to for amplifying more solutions led by women, for not just women but for the world.
Certainly. And I mean, you mentioned something quite important. The whole conversation around product design and how we sometimes are quite oblivious on the exclusion. I have a friend who has a master's paper in architecture, and she talks about transit spaces, right? And the exclusion of women in transit spaces, taxi ranks, if I may, in the language of South Africa, where, she's walls, and how high walls can be an impediment of safety for women in those particular spaces, where rape statistics, for example, are high, where men are able and enabled to make use of any that particular the experience of women and children just encountering that. And I mean, it's a completely different perspective, right? But it brings you to the conversation around product design, that when we speak product design, it's not just device. Buildings, can form a part of that. And maybe we need to start including our architectures in these conversations that we have in terms of how do we engage in a technologically enabled manner and also include women in there, which, Simi, brings me to you as well. Simi, by way of short introduction of yourself, but also, just the conversation around the value of data. We gather a lot of insights from data, and I think a lot of the problems that we face, they're quite data-centric, right? And by way of how you evaluate that data, how you analyze that data, you're able to get to a solution or able to create another problem by misreading that particular data. But interestingly, there's quite a number of tools that have been enabled over time. I mean, if we're talking queries, we tend to really rely quite a lot on SQL queries, example, and the use of SQL as a tool and multiple other tools. But what are some of the tools that, analytical tools that startups in particular can use in their organizations, and some common mistakes that are made? I mean, we've seen banks, for example, in the past, and might still be happening, by way of procurement, purchasing systems that are highly expensive, but not necessarily solving for the existing problem, because there was some sort of a mismatch of the problem versus the system solution that's needed. What are some of the systems that one can go onto, but also for training purposes? Not all companies pay for training. What are some of the analytical tools that can be, that are available on the likes of Udemy, that can be affordable for a Toriso to purchase, for example, and just practice off of her laptop on how to analyze data?
Okay. Thanks, Toriso. So hi, everyone. My name is Simi. I'm usually known as the SQL Babe. I currently work as a product specialist at Paystack, but I also run an SQL community called the SQL Tribe, where it's just basically a place for people who are interested in SQL or just data in general can come and then connect with each other. And I'm just very passionate about data and everything data. And I also teach SQL. To SQL to beginners, basically. So starting out, so in terms of tools you asked like 3 questions. So I think I'll start with the first one. So in terms of how companies review data and the kind of mistakes they make, I think usually when I see startups, because I work in the tech, the startup and the fintech ecosystem, right? I think people don't see data as being as important. I think it's now that people are starting to see how valuable data is, because I think over the past 2-3 years, more people are recognizing the effect of the importance of data, and that's why we're seeing a rise in the hiring of data analysts. But I see data as being the bedrock of any company. For an organization to function effectively, you need data, because what some of the things data really helps you do is, number one, it gives you insight into how your product is performing. So what are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? It also helps in basically knowing how to target the right customers, and just basically it just gives you an insight into what are you doing and how can you make your product better, right? And in terms of tools, so yes, we know SQL is basically like a language that is used to query databases. But there are other tools that people can use. And I think sometimes people think about storing data, they always think big, that, oh, you know, I need to have a big database set up. But as a startup, you might not even have that capabilities to properly host your data. And the truth is that there are tools out there that right now you can basically use. And then with time, as you get bigger, then you can then invest in more infrastructure. And I'll say it's as simple as even like Microsoft Excel or like the Google Data Studio. Google has done so much work in putting together a suite of tools that you can basically use as a new business to number one, save your data, and to also visualize your data. For example, even now I use Google Sheets a lot to store a lot of data, and even at my place of work, like yes, we have like an existing big database where all the information is stored, but there's still some information that we even store on like Google Sheets, and it's actually very secure because you can basically set permissions as to who has access to like some of the data on that particular file or something. And even for analyzing data, right? Just coming back to Google Suite, there's like Google Data Studio, which you can basically use to quickly analyze data. And but some of the other tools that I personally use are tools like Tableau. And Tableau is actually like, there's a version that people can go online and use, and it's free to like start with and learn how to basically use it. And there's Power BI. So there's so much out there. And I think even in the Nigerian ecosystem, I'm seeing like more data communities come up. I mean, there's one that I have, there's Data Tech Space, there's UVs, and interestingly, some of these other communities I've mentioned are also like run by women, which is amazing. So like more and more women also like in this field, and it's just very inspiring. I was even inspired to learn Tableau because of like another woman that joined my company who was she's like first Tableau Zen master in Africa, basically, right? So that's like those are some of the tools that people can use. And in terms of like, I think mistakes that I think some perceptions people have about like working with data, they always think that they need to have like a technical background. I remember the instances whereby I would put out announcements to say, I'm listening on the SQL class, and I would always question, oh, I just study computer science, can I work with data? And I always tell people that like data analysis or data visualization is you answering a question. Like you can't analyze data without trying to answer a specific question, right?
Yeah.
So you don't need to have any technical. I mean, I studied computer science, but really, but yeah, like you don't need to have a technical background to be able to either learn SQL or even like work with like Google Sheets or Google Data Studio. I think data is very interesting, and in the world we're living in now, I mean, we can see how much trouble Facebook got into a few years ago with the election as to how they release data, and it was just a mess because that's just the power of data. Data is so powerful, and all these companies are taking all our data one way or another. So yeah, that's what I'll have to say to that.
Absolutely. So I'm noting some of the questions that are coming onto here, and some of them we'll try to have answered during the Q&A session. And on that, Sini, I'm going to follow later on. Please, I'm going to ask you to pick up on Chidiogo Mbonu's question around the rise in data collection. And this is, of course, later on. And this is picking up from some of the tools that you've shared. I hope we're all taking notes of some of these tools, really, just so we can familiarize ourselves. There's a question here, Prof, coming back to yourself, Prof. David West. There's a question here around just making sure that the current curriculum meets the needs of societal needs, if we may put it that way. I'll make an example. I studied in the School of Information Technology about 6-7 years ago. I did my honors, and I would imagine that everything that I studied between first year and fourth year is currently very irrelevant, right? And then I would be absolutely disheartened if I were to find out that the curriculum is still matching of what was served to me between the years of 2011 and 2014. What's the role of academic, and how do we make sure that we remain abreast of the requirements? I mean, we unfortunately, as young professionals in Africa, we're constantly fed with information around how young professionals in America, in the UK, and the likes of dropped out of university because their computer science was taking far too long and it was not meeting the needs of their startup, of their product, or their innovation. How do we make sure that we remaining abreast with what is required by way of curricula.
Okay, great, thanks. And let me just confess, when about SQL, I had goose pimples, right? Because I've had, select star from star sort of embedded in my head for God knows how long. Okay, so Simi, don't give me those bad memories anymore. But let me go back into the question. I think that the role of academia is really part of an ecosystem. And we're not in isolation in any shape, form, or size possible, because what we have is that we're part of the societal development process and the human capital development process of each of our countries. So when you think about Nigeria, for example, and you look at we have 100 million adult population, but what's the productive capital that comes out of that 100 million? And that's when we now begin to sort of diagnose and go into the deep dive into how do we make this knowledge, how do we make this potential for productive? In academia, you find out that we've been given some levels of status and accomplishment that, again, we have to come and reevaluate every day, because status and accomplishment, like I mentioned, the performance management systems of academia is publish or perish. It's not about how well you teach or what you do. So the conversation is different. So when an academic is thinking about, how do I advance my career, he's really thinking about how do I advance my research and publish more papers and get promoted. It's not about who reads those papers or the value you're imparting on people's lives. So I think, again, it's really about having a reset. And a reset is more important because we have to look at the 3 dimensions. We have to look at the supply, we have to look at the demand, and we have to look at the policy space. And there's many different things that also have to correlate across those 3 dimensions. And unfortunately, we're in an environment where we have mindsets and nuances that have been cast in stone. And the change, so for example, we're regulated by a Nigerian regulator. Anything you want to do, we're a business school, and they insist when we have our visits, why don't you do a thesis? And we're like, we're a business school. A thesis is not relevant for business graduates, right? We do business plans and we do the whole business development process, but they still don't understand it in that, but it's not a thesis. There's no methodology. There's no literature review, etc., etc. So how do we distinguish between applied work and theoretical work? And we need to sort of educate ourselves and re-educate ourselves. I think the most important thing for us is that from the regulator on the policy perspective, we have to unlearn a lot of the nuances that we had in the 70s and 80s. So fortunately, there's young people like me who are also going into academia and that start to change that narrative. But then again, we have to fight it because it's still ingrained and set in. On the demand side as well, we need to start, on the supply and demand side, we need to build better relationships between town and gown. So when I say relationships between town and gown is what's going on in industry. So all the fabulous things the ladies here are doing, how do we transform and communicate those and start to embed those into curriculum, right? I studied computer science, and when I went into university, I was told that I had to use a mainframe computer. Basically, I had to punch cards. And I was like, wow. And so I had to go through that experience and do it. But again, okay, concepts and technologies have evolved, but the fundamental concepts are the same. So we need to understand, what is industry doing now? So we're talking about big data, we're talking about Internet of Things, we're talking about cloud storage and SQL. How do we bring all these things in? So our graduates are productive and they're useful from day 0. You don't want a situation where a lot of employers are now saying, I don't want to graduate from a Nigerian institution, right? And that's another form of exclusion, in the sense where we're now creating this hype and demand for foreign degrees when we can actually create. So how do we open up that market and open up the space and change the narrative? How do we make our education more practical? And how do we get people like Fadi and Elaho to go and speak to the students and even take a course? Right? Because you don't have to have the degree. It's about having the knowledge to be able to transmit and getting people to learn. So how do we blend it? How do they get them into the organizations to actually work? I was fortunate when I was in university here. I actually had, I was engaged by a company, an IT company in those days called Tara Systems. And how did I get there? They came into the university one day to say, we need students to volunteer for a program we're running. And I said, I'll volunteer. And they're like, we're a very good IT company. We work all hours, we do this. And I'm like, okay, I'll come and see. So that evening, I drove into their office, and that's how I built a relationship. And I worked there for the first 10 years of my career. But it's about relationships, it's about engagement, it's about breaking all the barriers and all the boundaries that we've seen, because we live in a world that's boundaryless today. We live in a world that's borderless today. So how do we begin to reorient our professors, reorient our industry, and also reorient the people that you also need to work hard to get the degree and to get the knowledge and to apply that knowledge, not just to have it in your head, right? What do you do with what you know? If you don't do anything with what you know, you might as well not know it. And there's a lot of reorientation and that we have to work at, but it all starts with everybody coming together and admitting there is a problem. Because if we don't admit there's a problem, we'll have these conversations and everybody will stay in their little silos and we'll sort of all say, oh, but we're doing our best, we're doing what's right. But let's come together, address the problem, and begin to innovate solutions around the problem. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Aloho, a question for you that's come in. This is a question from Temi, and Temi is asking, when looking into the female-led or gender balance, are there ways to ensure these ladies are not just figureheads?
I love that question. Oh my goodness. I think that is a spot on question. I think, to be transparent, we see that sometimes, right? Which is why, so we started off saying, gender diverse teams at First Check Africa. And it's interesting, the pipeline that we got, I hope, or don't mind me saying, 75% of that pipeline was teams where you had 4 people, 5 people, 3 people. You had 1 woman. She tended to be, there's certain roles, I guess, that when you have that one representative woman, there's certain roles they tend to put women in. And then when we would peel behind the layers and ask about questions like how the equity was split between them, you would have the experiences. And you might have, for example, a team of 3 and the 2 men were sharing 75%, 80% of the equity between them. The woman had 20%. And when you sort of, asked why, they would say, well, I had the idea. And so we were seeing a lot of that. And so, we started doing 2 things. First is we started in those situations, we started saying very openly, there's an issue here, right? There's an imbalance here, and you guys need to go away and think about fixing that, because you're on a journey with somebody, there are 3 of you, you probably need a little bit more balance, especially when you start to think about things like dilution. And we would sort of explain that and say you don't want to disincentivize people over time. But the other thing that we did was we refined our thesis so that we are now much more clear about, when we talk about women in leadership roles in startups, we're much more clear about what that means for us as First Check. So for us as First Check, that means we like women CEOs, we like women CTOs. We'll look at other roles and we'll consider, of course, the team dynamic, things like the equity, etc., between them. But the first kind of, I want to say, for us are the particular roles that the women have in the team. And I think it's an art, not a science. Of course, you don't want to assume that because a woman is not a CEO or CTO, she's not an equal contributor to that team. But we tend to then start to ask a lot more questions and start to watch the team dynamic, start to look at their equity split, and just make sure that the balance is there. And why is it important? It's not because we want to necessarily be difficult, but it's because when we think about our mission as First Check Africa, it's super, super important for us that through entrepreneurship, through technology, we are talking about and we're addressing the economic power that women have. It's not the only area or the space where women are sort of, are marginalized from a power standpoint, but we do think that as we help more women to own their own companies and to have significant build their own wealth, that does go some way towards closing some of these gaps. So we look for that representation in those ways.
Just around power cuts just now, and interestingly, I had to do a quick move of location because I got disconnected and cut off. And then thank you so much, Aloho. And I think moving on to Farah as well, the conversation around the figureheads is so interesting because in South Africa, for example, we speak about BEE, which is a policy that ensures that people previously disadvantaged or excluded people are included in business processes. Some people will argue that someone is a BEE hire. And I mean, I think sometimes the question around is it a bad thing that I will go in and make use of that opportunity if it is enabled for me to make use of that opportunity and make sure that I create ways of inclusivity for other people as well from there on. And Farah, just coming back to yourself there, and I have to catch my breath for a second. I just went up the stairs to try and catch power. and coming back to yourself there, for looking at the emergence of cryptocurrency, blockchains, and the likes of, I mean, what are these how can these trends and new method of payment really create room for women to play and thrive in the technology spaces, in those particular spaces? Because I think we speak around, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the likes of, in ways in which we can make money out of it, right? But I think from a product design and from a way of investment and education, really, because I think there's also quite a bit of a disconnect on an education front. We've seen in South Africa, there's a prominence of pensioners in particular losing their pension funds by, essentially putting them into there. And I would always say that it's a point of vulnerability, right? When someone would like to make a little bit more out of what they have, except there's a lot of people who have weird sites that are unfortunately fraudulent. But in terms of the incorporation of that particular world of cryptocurrencies and the likes of, how do these trends and new methods create room for women to participate in that space?
Yeah, I think that just generally, whether it be crypto or any other space that technology is a driver, when you're building a business, whether or not it's an API or an app, or it's a e-commerce site where you're taking payments, you are using technology as a driver to build your business. So that business has a lot of different roles. I mean, I think it was said a lot here, and that's something like Colette said earlier, was that you don't need to be an engineer to get into the field of technology. I think that's a very important thing that people should hear, especially women trying to get into the tech field. I mean, I am an engineer myself. I've been an engineer for my entire life, but I think that it's due to representation, and that's another point that I think Professor David West made as well, is that representation is really important in the sense that I was fortunate enough for the first person that taught me to code from when I was middle school, high school, college, were all women, and I thought that was oh my gosh, this person is coding and they're being very, this is so cool. But it took 8 years of my career to ever work in a company where I had another female engineer working next to me. So that is, if you look at that, I mean, there's a big divide and we need to talk about it. I mean, I think Eloha said that really well. Like, there has to be an actual conversation because there's a lot of biases and a lot of, even subconscious biases that people have when hiring and so on and so forth. That some comments that are just like, what are you talking about? And so on and so forth that come from hiring. And so I think that when you build crypto, NFTs, all these things are just opportunities in the market for new things to learn. I mean, there's a lot of, very, very free courses in the ed tech space online to get into a lot of different fields when it comes to, yes, engineering and coding, when it comes to product management, when it comes to, customer success, quality assurance. There's so many aspects of running that business in technology. And I think that these aspects bring out new opportunities for people. And also even specifically to those industries that you spoke about, there's even newer, opportunities within them when it comes to even coding and coding for blockchain and doing a lot of different things that you might not have that opportunity. A lot of data analytics. I know Sydney talked about, Tableau. There's like Metabase. There's all these, tools that you can use. And what I'll do is, after I answer this question, I'll share a bunch of resources for like online free courses for learning to code or learning to do product management and so on. And I think that startups have the role when they're building these kind of businesses to also look at their top of the funnel, look at your top of the funnel. How many people are you actually considering for the role that are women? How many people, because if you're trying to solve a problem of a divide, then you have to actually be deliberate about it. You have to go out of your way to solve the problem. The problem's not going to solve itself. You're not going to wake up and, you have a 50%, 60% women in your company. It has to be something you're actively seeking. I mean, we have, almost half of our engineers are female. We have a lot of female representation at Okra, but we're very deliberate about that. We make sure that our top of the funnel has a lot more women, because yes, you do want the best person for the role to get the job. That it's not to say that, somebody that's not qualified should get a role, but it's to say that you need more people that are vying for that role. And so I think that that's the role, like, these industries and a lot of other industries play, is just giving that opportunity. And then startups actually have to take that deliberate approach into giving these opportunities as well. And so, we are also at Okra hiring a product operations associate, which is an entry-level job into the technology field as well. So if you're, up for the challenge of solving a really difficult challenge, please message me directly on LinkedIn and so on, or visit our website and try to apply there, because there's definitely roles in the technology field. And I think we are going out of our way as well, and we need more. We need to see more of that in startups as well.
Which I think really also answers the question that's been posed by Ezekiel Boro, who's saying, a great panel. Thank you, Ezekiel, and says, thank you for organizing this AFF. Can some or all of the panelists share more about the ways they are personally and professionally or collectively driving the leadership and inclusion of African or Black women in the digital technological revolution? Panelists, I first check, but would be nice to hear more from others. Friday, and maybe doubling back to you on that one, because I want to almost to many of us, you happen to be in one of those what we call unconventional spaces, and what I mean by that is that lifestyle, as a result of economic exclusion for many people, is still something that is untapped. But in terms of your participation in that particular space, and ways in which you're personally and professionally and collectively, through the industry, through your partnerships in the industry, drive leadership and inclusion of African or Black women in the digital technology revolution. What are some of the efforts that are happening in your space?
Thank Stop. So whatever I do, I always try to make sure it's women-led. Farah mentioning about there not just being a large enough pool of women vying for the jobs, especially when it comes to the tech jobs itself. I'm always hiring, and it's so difficult to find. For every maybe 20 men that apply for a position, I find one woman. And even then, she might not necessarily be the best. So it's not just, I'm just going to hire somebody just because they're a woman. They also have to be at the top of their game. So we definitely need a larger pool of that. I just want to go back a little bit, because I actually, I guess I have a lot of what I call young females that I train them, I mentor them, and a lot of them have the same complaints, which is they are interested in tech. They're actually quite scared to actually, they don't know how to go about it. And when they go into a room, let's say they go into a university and they want to speak to somebody about learning anything to do with tech, it's all men. They go to a class, the professor's a man. All the students, the majority are men. They go to a lot of companies, the big name companies that have to do with tech, and everybody in there, from the gate man to the CEO, they're all men. So they get rather intimidated, and they then think, is this really an environment that will be conducive for me? So that's why representation is very important. And I think there needs to be some type of policy almost that drives this inclusion of women in STEM. And that way we would get a lot more options further down the line when it comes to hiring. But myself personally, yes, I mentor a lot of young women. Majority of my staff are women in senior positions as well. So from my product manager to my senior operations manager, they're all women. And what I do is basically based on their KPIs, once they hit those targets, they get free Udemy courses that are all about product development and actually making our tech solution a lot better. So some people might be interested in UI, UX design as a hobby. Some people might be interested in just data analysis. So whatever their interests are, we tend to reward our staff members by doing that. And luckily on our platform, Bookings Africa itself, we've got about 15,000 users, and about 65% of them are actually women. So we're always looking for solutions that would speak to our users. And now doing a lot of research, and we've found that, yes, we're currently speaking to women who are already digitally adopted and they have smartphones, but we are looking for solutions that can also target the marginalized. And that is solutions such as how can they access smartphones? How can they access data? How can they access digital literacy training? How can they access finance? And there's a lot of issues and hurdles that we find women are facing. So Bookings just giving you access to a market, we're also looking for other ways to actually include the marginalized members of communities by addressing all these issues. So yeah, we try to be quite deliberate with our involvement in women, but internally as a business, but externally as a solution as well.
And I mean, Tossin, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come to you there in terms of some of the innovations that have come up in that space, and maybe borrowing from some of Fadi's points in terms of lifestyle. And to make an example, Indonesia, for example, is adopting has adopted a massive digital nomad strategy where they allow people from various parts of the world to come work from Bali. I'm one of those people who have decided that I will take it on for as long as we're able to work from home. Cost of living is ridiculously lower than what I would spend in South Africa, for example. So therefore, there's actually a savings benefit for me there attached there as well. I mean, and that is really how technology then assists certain industries. Tourism in this particular case, and essentially, fast tracking, and not just fast tracking, but injecting some productivity into the country's economy. In Africa, do we have some of those countries where one can say that, listen, we're working from home at the moment, and home can be literally anywhere, and therefore I've decided that I'll go to the east or the west of Africa and to go get some work done from there on. What are some of the challenges with that? And are there any countries at this point in time? Because, and I say this because, I mean, if you look at the top 17 countries, we're looking at the Czech Republic. I mean, the requirements are quite high. We're looking at Indonesia, requirements are quite low. We even have what we call digital nomad visas that are being made available by various countries at this point in time. And for us to sort of pump up not just tourism, but economic activity in the continent, will that not be one of the viable methods? And are there countries that we can pick right now and say that I can go work from that one without being worried about connectivity and the likes?
Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. Honestly, I don't know of any African countries that currently has that sort of initiative. But I do know that some companies that allow you to work from home in Nigeria, you see a lot of people traveling and, going to Dubai, for instance, or going to Cape Town or going to the UK and working from there. But I don't know of any African countries that has that sort of visa-free initiative. I definitely know Nigeria doesn't have it right now. But I know that.
As technologists that aim then, Tossin, to assist various industries, because technology is at the center of all the industries. And I mean, the solutioning of it sits within that particular space. Is it not our responsibility to tap in some of the various industries? And maybe let's sway away from tourism. Are there industries at this point in time where, as technologists, we can sort of boom in and assist and build new technologies that are not only inclusive, but make sure that we have women teams, and we have not just, because whenever we speak technology, people are very quick to say, oh, it's the coding world, it's the business analysis world, the project management world, but really it can span across broadcasting, across the arts. I mean, we speak about the marriage between the arts economy and technology as well. Are there industries that we can take advantage of and try to find our ways of participation, technologically speaking?
I think so. And I mean, I'm glad that you said that, you don't have to have a STEM background to play in the tech space. And I think I'm a perfect example. For example, I studied accounting. I've worked in finance, in assurance and strategy, and now I'm supporting tech startups. So I think the most important thing is to be curious. And if you are curious about something, you should explore it and evolve with it. So I think no matter the sector, no matter the industry, technology will and can enable that sector or industry. And I think all women should be curious about it. If you're curious about programming, for instance, then you should explore it and evolve with it. If you're curious about the arts, for instance, and how technology enables art, you should explore it and you should evolve with it. And if you do identify that you have a knowledge gap, I think what you should do is create like some sort of learning map and upskill yourself. And just, be the go-to person with time in whatever sector or industry it is that you find yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just a reminder, please do post your questions on the left-hand side of the platform on the chat part. I'm going to go through some of the questions right now, and do engage on our social media platforms as well. It is on @Africa FinTech Foundry on both Instagram as well as Twitter, standing to be completely guided there as well. And I think for networking purposes, I've seen some LinkedIn requests that have been coming in. For LinkedIn, for networking purposes, I do encourage you to follow our different panelists and speakers and some of the work, and a lot of them really do post their work on social media sites, and you can tap into there. Simi, there's a couple of tech questions that have come up to you here. So a question from Eddie Diong saying, I started learning project management, but gradually I got interested in Q&A testing. Does this have to do with data? Because as I Google, QA testing seems to be intertwined with data analyzing.
So from my brief experience with QA testing, because I've worked previously as a business analyst, so I worked a little bit. The way I understand QA testing is more like that's quality assurance. It's basically like testing like a product developed by the developers or the engineers, and basically seeing like it doesn't fit, like does it work as it's supposed to? Does it fit like specific user scenarios that it's supposed to fit into? I'm aware that they use like SQL, at least from like where I work. I'm aware that they use SQL to basically like do like some testing, but
Yeah.
I don't see it as being like, I don't see how it ties directly to data analysis. So that's what I would say to that.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's a couple of people that share in their frustrations as well. There was a comment here from, I think it wasn't Magdalene Jack, it was someone else. I mean, I want to tap onto the on Magdalene Jack's commentary as well, but someone also shared a frustration around how, Prof, if you can help me with that one, and I'm going to go high level on it because I'm not finding at the moment, around how some of these platforms. Simi, are you speaking?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I don't know. Was the question still for me? Because I took down some of the questions just in case like we missed them.
No problem, no problem. Simi, let's do this. I think let me just address that one around the frustration, right? And I'm going to ask you to come back on some of the ones that you had picked up. Prof, there was a comment around frustration around how these platforms, these conversations and forums are really sometimes just pretense measures, right? And we can understand where that comes from. That comes from frustration of being excluded. That comes from the frustration of not seeing transformation happen. And in the instance, and I keep using South Africa as my home example, in that 27 years into freedom in South Africa, we're still having conversations around how it's possible to be the only woman in the team. It's possible to be the only Black woman amongst a team of just white men, for example. How do we ease that frustration to say that for people sitting in the US, fighting Black Lives Matter and being a fully productive member of society and the economy at the same time, all the stresses from there on, and the frustration, how do we best deal with it without undermining people's lived real experiences?
Thank you. And I think the whole idea of the question and having these conversations is we need to start talking about things, and whether it or not, it takes time. And I'll share with you about, so when we talk about gender, sex is biological, right? We're defined as male and female, but gender is more social and cultural. And that's where the masculinity and the femininity comes in. And when you get into trying to change social and cultural norms, we have to understand that there are many biases that have been embedded in us. So I'll give you a small example. I go walking in Lagos on some days, and we have this security man at the gate. And he greets my husband every morning, "Good morning, sir." And he ignores me. And so one day I just raised it to my husband. I said, "Do you realize that he never greets me?" And those are just the little nuances that have been embedded in us. So how do we start to change these things? It's frustrating because change doesn't happen as fast as we want it to happen. But conversations like this are a start. And maybe we need to have more conversations like this. We need to share more about what's going on. We need to share more about successes. I've been doing this now for more than 30 years. And it's not going to be, it might be a generational change. It might be a generational process that we need to change, but it's time. 30 years ago, I wouldn't even have had anyone to sit on a panel with me. Okay. Are we here? Okay, great. I said 30 years ago, I wouldn't have had anyone to sit on a panel with me. Right? And now we have wonderful women who are doing different things across different spheres. So let's be patient with the fact that it's not a light switch, and norms would not change overnight, right? We need to continue talking about it. We need to continue engaging and bringing these people up. And as we said, there are opportunities, but women also need to realize that it's not going to be a free pass. We need to put in the work. And I think it was Tosin that said, we need to learn. Right? There are many things that we can learn. We need to learn about how to be self-confident. We need to learn about emotional intelligence. We need to learn how to control our tempers, our emotions, and not think that anyone owes us anything in life, right? But we need to earn it. We need to be able to again, assertively, someone said, be soft on the people, hard on the issues, right? Assertively, when someone is man speaking just politely say, I haven't finished, rather than just going into a huff and things like that. So let's know the tricks. Let's build our own toolkit. Let's have our war room of different things to enable us so that we get a seat on the table and we stay there. But again, that seat on the table has to be earned. And I think Fadi made mention of it, that out of 20 men, there's one woman, and sometimes they don't cut it. So it's, yes, we will have a gender, or companies will encourage companies to have a gender lens in terms of how do you look at your policies, how do you bring about equity, diversity, inclusion. But then again, we need to also realize that the competition is steep. How do we rise to that? How do we ensure that, there's no harm in asking someone like Eloho, I need to make a pitch with someone. Can I practice with you? Don't just go in there blind. Do things, use the networks to actually build you up and climb up the ladder. Don't wait and say, oh, well, I was rejected. They only want men. Okay, so let's also be smart about these things and work towards closing those barriers. The frustrations are better, guys. Let me be honest with you. So it's a much better space that we're in now. There's more things happening, but it's also about, let's just realize that we need to play the game and play better than everybody else. Thank you.
Absolutely. So there's a comment from Magdalene Jack that says woman needs to be redefined as regards to our mindset, to the perceptions about women, to build our confidence better, focus with determination against the validation anyone has about women. When our mindset about who we are is right, then we may be able to approach certain boundaries, whether or not we're welcome in certain sectors, because of our capacity. And I think that really speaks on boundaries. There's actually a video that's been trending on Twitter recently of I think a Namibian sports presenter and a news anchor, goes by Jessica, and if you get a chance to just check it. Basically, Jessica there draws the lines of boundaries and teaches someone how to treat them, on a live video, which is seen as unfortunate and unprofessional, but unfortunately sometimes we do need to address the matter in the same space and platform in which it is happening at. Farah, just a question around testing. There's a question, can a member of the panel talk a bit on quality testing in the tech world? And I think this speaks to overall tech testing, right? In terms of product development, code development, and ongoing testing. I mean, any user of an app will know that sometimes you get kicked out of an app because it hasn't been updated. I mean, because you don't have the most updated version. But the value of testing in that particular space and quality testing in particular, can you speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that testing is really important as you're scaling an infrastructure generally, because you're not just trying to build a business, you're trying to build a technology that scales as well. And so a lot of times what we call it is your happy paths, right? When you're building software, you build a lot of happy paths, like I log in, I do this and do that, and everything works fine, and everything is great until somebody else uses it and they actually do something maybe out of order just a bit, and everything comes crashing down. And so I think that that's kind of like, in essence, what you have quality assurance for, is to make sure that, one, you spot things before your users spot them, your customers spot them, and also you understand if this thing even works as expected as well. There's different aspects to that quality assurance spectrum though. So there's everything from a non-technical quality assurance to QA engineers as well, and I think that that's why quality assurance is it's a really great industry, because there's so much you can do. So there's all the way from building use cases where you're saying my expected behavior, I expected to do this and this was my expected outcome, but this was the actual outcome, right? And you're building test cases for the team to look at that. Then you have the second aspect in that journey where it's the person that's actually testing those aspects. So this is a non-engineer, non-technical role where you're using these use cases, and as a non-biased person, bipartisan person, you're testing that, and then you're saying, okay, did I get the expected result? And then you're logging that. Then you have, the other spectrum of the technical, the engineers that are actually building test cases. And, sometimes it's the actual software engineer building the product. Sometimes it's a dedicated quality assurance engineer, and they're actually writing test cases so that programmatically you're never, pushing new features and so on and so forth that are going to come crashing down. This just minimizes the amount of updates you have to do, or like you said, you get in the app, and you can always tell what was done with quality assurance in an app when you look at, let's say, the what's new with this update. There are a lot of times they'll tell you, update, we fixed a bunch of bugs and we did this and we did that, and a lot of times that comes straight out of quality assurance. So I think that a lot of times these are unsung heroes of a lot of organizations, because these are people that are actually making sure that your product works as expected. It works so with quality assurance, all the way from just spotting the issues all the way to fixing the issues. I think it's a wide spectrum, so there's a lot of opportunity there as well. And I think one of the things that I sent has a course that's dedicated to quality assurance as well.
Absolutely. Aloha, I'm going to throw in two questions at you. So there's one that we have around VCs, right? And there's a rising fear among startups that VCs in Nigeria in particular want to give so little for so much equity. And my face cringes when I talk about that, because it's theft of IP. It's theft of IP more than anything. One, taking advantage of their power dynamics of infrastructure, of finance, and available resource to take advantage of somebody else's IP. And oftentimes, I think you spoke about this earlier in terms of women are asked different questions. And unfortunately, in those different questions, sometimes women are even provided with completely different profit margins. Sometimes that they're not even profits, right? It's funding that you get to use for your operating expenses and make almost very little to nothing out of your own IP. Your take on that particular one. So that's a question that's come up for you. Your take on that one?
Sure. So the question is my take on people writing unfair. My take is that it's unfair. I think it's interesting. I was thinking about this morning. I'm not sure why the thought occurred to me, so I'm glad that you've asked the question. I don't think this is necessarily the reason, but the approach that I was taking this morning was I was just thinking about some of these trends that we have in the ecosystem around, there just being significantly more capital available for startups than there has been historically. The reality is when you look at the capital that's coming into Africa, it's tiny, but it is significantly more than we've historically been used to, right? We at First Check Africa every week we host. Today, for example, we were on a Clubhouse room with the founder of Mono. We had a really, really interesting conversation. And specifically, he was talking, the room was framed how I raised my first $100,000. And he talked about how he had raised his first $100,000 via, frankly, somebody sending him a DM saying, I can see you have a really interesting product. Here's $100,000, go and figure it out. And I think it was fantastic to have that conversation and for people to hear it. But the reality is that's a very different experience, probably from a lot of female tech founders, right? But he also shared something about his first startup, which he said, not his first, sorry, one of his previous startups. He had about 4 or 5 before Mono. And he said on one in particular, they were not able to effectively grow or scale the startup because they had a set of terms that had been written into the first investor's term sheet that meant that he or she, I guess it was a she, had to pre-approve funding into the company. So he had effectively a veto right on anybody else coming into the company. And that meant that they were not able to raise additional capital, and they had to effectively shut that startup down. So I think the way that unfair terms play out can be in the equity shares and people, writing a smaller check for the amount of equity that they're asking for. It's also in some of the other terms beyond the financial terms, right? That mean that founders are locked into structures that are not necessarily favorable and are not flexible for them. At the end of the day, there are a lot of non-founder friendly terms that are being written. I think a couple of things. I think the reality is as our ecosystem gets more and more mature, as we have an influx of more experienced venture capitalists from outside, and as we build that venture capital capacity on the continent and in our individual markets, that trend will change because people will find that the market is much more competitive. They'll find that the entrepreneurial networks themselves are growing. People, for Professor David West's point, are asking more questions. We'll find that some of those unfair terms are effectively coming out of the market today. There's a responsibility on those of us who are writing capital, who are writing checks, right? To one, of course, write more founder-friendly terms, but two, for those of us who know that there are things going on that are just really not fair, we should be speaking about them more. So for example, I had a young lady yesterday, again, to David West's point around asking people, I had a young lady who said randomly, and I always respond to people who send me DMs about the things that I'm involved with. And she sent me a question and said, look, I'm 21 years old. I want to figure out my capital with my co and we're having a discussion. I want X amount and he wants X amount. What do we do? And I said to her, well, first of all, don't forget that you're going to have to hire a bunch of employees and you probably will need to incentivize them with capital. Secondly, I said to her, I said, is there any particular reason why you guys are, you're discussing having a little bit less equity than he is, etc.? Why don't you start with a 50-50? And we had a whole conversation about that, right? And I think, first of all, I was really happy to be having that conversation because she asked the question. And I research, but here is my kind of first pass. And I would encourage more and more people to actually, be involved in these kinds of conversations with the entrepreneurs and to say when things are not founder friendly. We have a lot of non-founder friendly terms out there. And we're all kind of, again, being a little bit secretive about the fact that these things happen. The final point I think I want to make is that there's a trend at the moment, which I think is a good thing overall, but there's a trend at the moment where there's a significant sort of interest right at the top of the funnel that pre-seed from angel investors. Everybody wants to be an angel investor. And that's great because there's more capital coming into the ecosystem. But the reality is a lot of those people will not be coming with the experience of having been angels for a decade, right? And so they want to write terms where they say, I'll give you $10,000. I want 5% of your company. I want to be on the board. I want you to send me all these reports. And as a first-time founder, that sounds reasonable, but the reality is a lot of that is not reasonable, right? And, we just have to be much more open, much more transparent. We have to teach people how to be good investors. We have to teach founders what good terms look like. We have to get founders who have raised to talk about what good terms and bad terms look like. And I think all of that will come as the ecosystem develops. But I'm a big advocate of the fact that I guess the way to accelerate that is by beating the drums now, so that some of those are resolved faster.
Absolutely, absolutely. A reminder to participate on the Africa FinTech Foundry Instagram page. There's a couple of questions that are being posted there. And remember, there will be some special prizes and so forth that are shared later on. And Asimi, you had a couple of technical questions that are posed to you. Do you want to pick on two maybe that you can respond to?
Okay.
There we go.
Yes, I've unmuted myself. Yeah, thanks. So I think some more came in after I didn't. I think so. The first question I think I would like to pick was the one on data like safety. So someone asked this question that like with the raise in data collection, how do we ensure our personal data is safe? So the way I think about it right now, I see a lot of people saying, I don't want to share my data with some of these big tech companies, the Facebook, Twitter. I don't think it's a battle we're ever going to win, especially if we're going to keep using like their applications. But however, there are other ways through which you can keep your data safe. And I think it even starts with like login access to like having like where you store your password. So how do you store like the passwords to some of these your applications? I think there's like LastPass, there's one password. Like these are some applications that you can use to safely store like some of the passwords to like your application. So if you're in a company that like for example, you work in payments and you want to ensure that no one is able to easily hack you, those are some of the ways through which you can like safeguard like your login details. And I think also in terms of like two-factor authentication, I see more companies now doing two-factor authentication. I have two-factor authentication for everything that I have, like every application I'm on right now. So I think that's like one of the ways through which you can keep your personal data, and just also check like in terms of like permissions, like on your mobile device, what permissions are you giving to some of these applications? Are you allowing them to track your data in the background? So these are some of the things I would say. Then I've been seeing more people ask questions about where do I take trainings? So Coursera is a very good place, and someone said that Coursera is a very good place to take trainings. And Udemy, I personally use Udemy. However, like I understand that it's not everyone that can afford them. So what I would also advise people to do is, especially like if you're interested in a particular, I'll pick data analysis for example. There's so many communities out there now that actually hold free training sessions, and just like even if you don't know anything yet, there's so many people that in my community now that they don't know anything about SQL, but like we ask questions every day so that people can basically engage. I think that's like one of the ways through which like you can get started. And then with time, by the time they hold like these free events, because you're in the community, you have access to that information and you know exactly what's going on. I mean, unfortunately, Twitter is banned, but I've said, try and sort of like follow people that also like talk about some of these things. And I think for me, Twitter has been very special to me because I've met like so many people on that platform. I've been able to like do so many things and just like grow my personal brand on that platform. So I would say like those are one of the things, but like just look out for data communities. I'll probably share some of them here. Or tech communities, there are a lot of STEM women communities that you can join right now. And I think with that, it will be very helpful, and you can get started from there. But Udemy, yes, once in a while they offer free, like they do like promos, so you can also like just subscribe and check out for that.
Yeah, those are generally my favorites because there is quite a lot. And then even in language learning, I found a free Swahili one recently. I didn't quite enjoy the lecture, but there's quite a lot of programs that you can get for free as well on platforms such as Udemy. And I think also just to highlight to everyone the importance of reading. Our CEO, that's Audrey Mutubi, talks a lot around picking up an article a day at least and just reading up on that. Sometimes you might not have extensive understanding, but it becomes familiar, right, when the conversation comes up again. And I think we create opportunities for questions. Fade, and just coming lastly to you, there's a question that's coming up multiple times around balance. And I think this is owing to cultural and traditional norms of expectations of women in households. Well done on the women that have been able to strike balances in their homes and to emphasize the fact that cooking is a basic human skill and not a woman's activity. But in many households, really, some women prefer to be the one that takes on those particular responsibilities alongside a very demanding job, alongside a lifestyle, etc., etc. On the balance, because this has come up quite often, and I want to believe that these questions come from women who want to learn how to strike that balance. The balance between personal and career, the balance between being a mom, a friend, a sister. A lot of us are teachers now. I've become a tutor for my younger cousins who are learning from home. How does one strike a balance and still follow the pursuit of excellence in what they do?
Thanks, Teresa. And honestly, I'm still trying to find the solution myself. And some days or some weeks, I'm just all about my family. And of course, it's all about time management and prioritizing. And I have a very small circle naturally, and I have a lot of strong women around me. So they understand that, and they're also in pursuit of greatness. So they actually are very forgiving and understand that greatness sometimes demands a little bit of sacrifice. And they know that my intent might not necessarily be to negate or to be a recluse or not return their phone calls. My mom will complain about this, not returning phone calls for days. But at the same time, they know that my intent is actually coming from a good place, and I might get swamped, but communication is key. You can get overwhelmed or can maybe underachieve with work, but as long as you communicate what's going on adequately with those and yeah, I don't really I think do what's best for you. What's best balance is key. During the pandemic, once every 2 weeks, I'd literally work from the beach. I'd get to my friend's beach house 9 a.m. 4 p.m. a couple of every, and I found that actually helped me relax, and it helped. I mean, maybe just subconsciously, I was pretending I was in Saint-Tropez or so. Whatever it was, it actually helped. I'm not married. I don't have to admire women who I can't even imagine, as stressed and as overwhelmed as I get. To add that on top of it, it's literally like women are really super women. And I just wanted to take this moment to just also encourage anyone who's watching or listening. If you're not actually a tech person, or you don't have any technical skills, and you still want to play a part in this ecosystem, then I would definitely love to contribute or give you any advice. So maybe how I raised funds, how I was able to.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to interrupt because we're gonna get cut now. And thank you so much to all our panelists. Please do connect with all the names and all the panelists and all the speakers that have been present today. Thank you so much. My name is Toriso Maloka, and it's been a pleasure being with you here today. Continue the conversation.
Wow, guys, that was amazing. I hope you paid so much attention. Thank you so much to all our speakers. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to be having the vote of thanks. The head of AFF will be giving. So just drop down in the comment section, guys, just before we go. What exactly are your learning points? What did you learn today? What exactly, what's one minor thing that you can take out of this event and say, obviously, this is a conversation we need to keep having. Obviously, we need to keep driving diversity. We need to keep creating the environment, the work environment, creating the skills, creating the jobs, like Fade said, like Noah said, and the rest of them, so as not to allow women to feel marginalized. So just put it down in the comment, right? So what exactly have you gotten out of this event? In what way exactly has it shaped your view, your look, your view on the tech industry and how you campaign in the tech industry? Whether you're a male, whether you're a female, just put it out there. Thank you, Edidion. This was a good session. Oh, thank you, Ezekiel. Love the comment. I just keep commenting. I'm reading them as you're coming in. Great panel again. Impressive work all of you are doing. Thank you, Ezekiel. Fadi has also put on her LinkedIn, so don't just go ahead and contact her as well. How do one contact via social media handle? So our IG handle is Africa FinTech Foundry, guys. I put it there before. Just go over to our social media as well. As I said earlier, we are giving 5 women free entry. Just answer most of the questions as much as you can. That tells me you're paying attention, and we'll announce the top 5 by the end of tomorrow. So the vote of thanks will be given by Daniel. While we're waiting for Daniel to come online, just keep putting down your messages. I'm reading them. Thank you, Chidima. Chidima said, thank you, quite insightful. Phenomenal video, said amazing session. Thanks to all the panelists. Thank you so much. This means a lot. Carry on, carry on, carry on. I'm still reading most of your comments. Eddie Young said this was a good session. I've learned that as women, we have to keep learning to earn our spot in the tech world. Exactly. We need to. Farah has also put her LinkedIn down there. Make sure you also go ahead and add and make network. Remember, towards the end of the session, you can also network with people. Go ahead and do so. There is a people section on the sessions. That way you can schedule a meeting, you can meet them, you can liaise with people. Networking is very key. And I know this was discussed in a panel session. I think Tosi and Prof. David West very much elucidated why it was very key. Gift says, thank you for putting this together. Please give us the IG address. The IG handle is at Africa FinTech Foundry. Just answer as many of the questions that you can. Keep up with the conversation. I want you guys to know this event is not just the very first and last. As I said earlier when I was introducing you all, that we have to keep having this conversation. This is a conversation that needs to keep having. Men are also involved in this conversation. It's not only for women. We're still waiting on our vote of thanks, which will be given by Daniel Aware. So Daniel Aware is the head of AFF. Hello, Daniel. Super happy to have you. Take away.
Thank you so much, Amma, and thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Awe. I'm very excited. This program has been so interesting, and I think I learned a lot. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about the gender imbalance. So at AFF, one of our key pillars is that we run an accelerator program where we are very, very passionate about working with startups, innovators. We bring them accelerator program, and we try to create the next future, because if you look at Nigeria today, as a country, we have been growing economically, but we have not been developing. And for us to develop, we need to work with startups, we need to work with innovators, we need to work with entrepreneurs, whereby they can create businesses, they can build the entire economy, they can increase employment. And in our little space in AFF, we are very passionate about working with people with very humble beginning. I mean, when I say humble beginning, I mean the startups who are just coming into business. So in our last accelerator program, we had about 307 applications. And dissecting the numbers, if you look at the probability of a woman startup getting into our accelerator, it was very low. And if we were not conscious, if we were not deliberate, we're probably not going to have a single woman in our accelerator program. So we went all out to come up with a formula and say that the top 10 out of the 307, the top 10 must have a minimum balance of 70 to 30. So we're deliberate to ensure that we're able to get a woman startup or two women or more than two, at least minimum of three into the accelerator. And I think today, among the 10 startups, I think we've made a very good decision. The women in the startup our accelerator program have been very exceptional, very excellent. They are such a wonderful people to really want to work with. I mean, it's something that I'm so happy about. I'm extremely proud to be associated with women in this space. So on this note, we went out for this program on a deliberate action and said we want to work with women, and there's been so much imbalance in this gender space around lending. Even the artificial intelligence algorithm does not factor women. So you have a lot of excluded women in lending, in financial services, etc. So this is a program that we're very passionate about. We are deliberate about it, and we're going to have the white paper. We're going to publish the white paper, and we're also going to get this recorded for those that probably want to refer to it. I think the discussions have been extremely insightful. There have been such an educative feedback from experienced and top technocrats we had in this particular event. So on behalf of Africa FinTech Foundry, I would say a very big thank you to our special guest. She's our mom and she's a mentor, Dr. Awoshika. Dr. Awoshika is the chairwoman of the Access Bank Board of Directors. And for a woman to lead the board of an Access Bank, the fastest growing bank in the world, the biggest bank on the continent by customer base, and probably the biggest bank in Nigeria at the moment. And with the kind of aggressiveness, for you to lead that kind of board, you need about 3 men to lead the board as chairman. But this is a woman that is single-handedly leading this effortlessly, and we can see the results. So we are really appreciative to have you, ma'am. And we thank you for the words of wisdom, for your message, and at the same time for being a mentor to the next generation. And to our eloquent speakers, I mean, we could have gotten better speakers. We call on you, and you are able to give us some of your time today, telling us a lot from your wealth of experience, and then also inspiring a lot of people that have joined this program. It's really, really an opportunity, and we're extremely privileged to have you all on this program. And to our audience that have taken their time to come on this program, this is for you, and we're appreciative of having you around. And it makes it all a lot interesting. The feedback on the chat session, the questions, the feedback on the social media. We are so grateful to have the entire ecosystem join this program. And to our partners, Systemic Logic in South Africa, we thank you for the effort, the late night work, the dry runs, for all the meetings and all that stuff, and the women community in Access Bank and our partner, Accelerate TV. We appreciate you. And to our sponsor, Access Bank, who have supported this 100%, and being the biggest bank in Nigeria, and truly the world's most respected African bank. I think it's such a brand to be associated with. So on this note, it is my pleasure to run down the program and say a very big thank you to everybody once again. And I wish you a very good afternoon, those in Nigeria and those in other parts of the world. I wish you a good morning or good evening, and also a very wonderful weekend. And in Nigeria too, I wish you all a happy Democracy Day tomorrow. And thank you, and God bless you all. Have a good afternoon.